Hello and welcome back from spring break. This week we're going to talk about responsibility accounting. And in order to do that, you need to understand what are the different things managers could be responsible for. And there's three different kinds of ways of setting up a department that is going to determine what you hold managers accountable for. So the first is a cost center. If you have a cost center, then the manager of that cost center is only responsible for costs or expenses. So an example might be the accounting department. The accounting department in most companies doesn't make money. They don't bring in any sort of revenue, but they do generate costs. They have people, they have computers, they use square footage of a building. So if you manage a cost center, you're only going to be responsible for costs. So for example, when I worked at Oracle, I never generated revenue, so sad, but I didn't. But I did have costs. I had employees, those employees had computers, we took up space in the building, we traveled, all of those were costs. And I was given a budget at the beginning of the year, or I requested a budget, and then I was given the adjusted smaller budget, and then I was responsible for making sure that my department stayed within those costs. Okay, a profit center. A profit center, as you can imagine, is expected to make a profit. So they're responsible for revenue and expenses. And a lot of times actually what they're judged by is their gross margin ratio. So for example, a frozen food department might be expected to make a gross margin ratio of 3%. So they'll be judged on their revenue and their expenses indirectly based on what kind of a margin they're producing. Okay. The third kind is an investment center, and they're responsible for revenue and expenses and the return on the investment. So it may be, let's say I'm the manager of an oil rig, right? Oil rigs are kind of expensive to construct. So I would be responsible for the revenue, for the oil that we pull out, for the expenses, but also for getting a certain kind of return on the investment of building the oil rig. Another example might be if we build a call center. And so if I'm in charge of the call center, I am in charge of not only the revenue and expenses, but also for making sure that we are getting a certain return on the investment. So there's two things really we're going to do this week. One is we're going to look at allocating expenses. And really what that means is we're going to take all of the costs in the cost centers and we're going to allocate them to the profit centers. So at the end of the day, all of the costs can be associated with a profit center that's actually making revenue. Because if you think about it, the only reason we have cost centers is to help us to somehow generate revenue. We're not going to have a cost center just because like we feel bad for accountants and we want to give them a job. No, we have accountants because we have a business and we have legal requirements to generate financial statements. We may also have internal requirements to generate financial statements. So the reason, if you think about it, we have accountants is because we're making money. Because we are selling something, we have a need to have accountants. So in the first part of this module, we are going to learn how to allocate all of our cost center costs to our profit centers. Then, in the second part of this module, we're going to take our profit centers and turn them into investment centers, and we're going to start looking at what was not only their profit, but what was their return on the investment, and I'll give you information to do that. So, cost center, profit center, investment center. Wake up, we're back from spring break. All right, we're gonna have a good time this week, and so I'm gonna sign off there and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.